Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi. Alhamdulillah, in this video, we're going to be giving a brief overlook at how someone who studies grammar should look at words in the Arabic language. So this video is not for someone who's beginning to study Arabic grammar, but rather it's for someone who's already studied Arabic grammar and wants to better understand and have a khulasa, a short summary and overview of how words, whether they be a fi'al or ism or a harf, are looked at from the perspective of a grammarian. So النحو, as we know, is علم بأصول تعرف بها أحوال أواخر الكلمة. Nahu is a science that teaches you principles which enable you to know the ending of the word. Is a word going to be marfu'a and fatamma or any of its substitutes? Is a word going to be mansub but it's going to end with fatha or any of its substitutes, or majrurun or majzumun, and the list goes on. So that is what Nahu deals with. What's going to be the ending of the word, right? And the changing that we're going to be seeing at the end of the word when we're studying grammar is called i'rab, right? I'rab is تغيير أواخر الكلمة لاختلاف العوامل الداخلية عليها لغة وتقديرها. I'rab is the changing that you're going to be seeing at the ending of the word because the change of active elements entering upon it. So I'rab is the practical application, if you will, of the science of grammar in terms of what's actually going on when you're studying grammar. What's actually going on is I'rab. So this is what grammar deals with. My main point in saying this with this introduction is to make us understand that Nahu, grammar in the Arabic language, deals solely with the ending of the word and deals solely with whether the word is قابل للإعراب, it can accept إعراب, or whether the word cannot accept إعراب and thus it is مبني. So every single thing in the Arabic grammar that you're going to study deals with this idea of what's going to be the ending of the word. So everything we study in grammar is only to figure out, is this word going to end with a dhamma or a fatha, mansub, marfu', and this goes on. So based on this, when you look at Arabic words, as we know, al-kalam, Arabic speech, can be broken down into three different parts, meaning that speech is always made up of words, and those words are going to be one of these three things. Words in the Arabic language, whatever the word may be, is going to be one of these three things. Either a fi'al, or a ism, or a harf, right? A fi'al is like dhahaba, a ism is like kitab, and a harf is like la. Now, fi'al, verbs, can be broken down to two different categories from the grammarian's perspective. Verbs that are mabni, meaning that their ending cannot change, meaning that they are, they cannot accept i'rab, or verbs that are mu'rab, which means verbs which their ending can change and they can accept i'rab, right? And i'rab is a change that we're seeing at the end of the word because of the change of active elements entering upon it. So verbs can be broken down to two different categories based on this idea. Verbs that are mabni, meaning their ending will never change. We have the past tense verb, al-fi'l al-madi, like dhahaba, which are always stuck on a fatha that's either dhahir or hidden. And then we have the fi'l al-amr, the verb of command. And the verb of command, according to the school of Basra, is also mabni. So for example, qul, ijlis, idrib, all these verbs are mabni. And then finally we have al-mudari' dhun nunayn, the fi'l al-mudari' that possesses one of the two noons. The fi'l al-mudari' that possesses one of the two noons. What's meant here is a fi'l al-mudari' that possesses either nun al-tawkid, it's been attached to nun al-tawkid, or nun al-tawkid has been attached to it. So yadarabanna, for example. Or a fi'l mudari' that has nun al-niswa, the nun of femininity attached to it. For example, yadarabna or tadarabna, for example. So these two types of fi'l mudari' that have either nun tawkid attached to it or a nun al-niswa attached to it are also going to be mabni. So when you look at a verb in the Arabic language as a grammarian, you have to ask yourself, is the verb mabni or mu'rab? If the verb is mabni, it has to be a past tense verb or a fi'l al-amr or the fi'l al-mudari' that has one of the two noons. And if that's the case, khalas, you did your job, you don't have anything to say anymore. So you'll say fi'l al-madi, mabni. Fi'l al-amr, mabni. Fi'l al-mudari' اتصل بنون توكيد, mabni, for example. But on the other hand, a verb can also be mu'rab, but a verb will be mu'rab only in one scenario if it's a fi'l mudari'. It's a fi'l mudari' that does not have one of the two noons, of course. So the fi'l mudari' is going to be able to accept i'rab, but it's only going to be able to accept one of these three i'rabs. Either it's marfu' or mansub or majzumun, right? وحكمه الرفع إذا يجرد من ناصب وجازم كتسعد. And the fi'l mudari', its de facto position is that it's marfu'. So you look at a fi'l mudari', it's going to be marfu' except if something makes it mansub or something makes it majzuman. But the de facto position is that every single fi'l mudari' is marfu' except if something makes it mansub or something makes it majzuman. What are some things that can make it mansub? A harf nasib, for example, a particle that will make it mansub, like len. Len is going to make the verb that comes after it mansub, so you're going to say len yadhhaba, right? Or you have a harf jazm that's going to make the fi'l mudari' majzumun. Lam yadhhab, lam is a harf jazm, so it's going to make yadhhab majzumun. So khalas. Once you've understood this, you've understood verbs. Is the verb mabni or mu'rab? If the verb is mabni, it has to be a past tense or a fi'l amr or a fi'l mudari'. If a verb is mu'rab, it has to be mudari' and it's going to be marfu' except if I can explain why it's mansub with something or why it's majzum because of something. If you understood this, you've understood verbs in the Arabic language, khalas, that's out the way. Moving on to the harf. A harf is a particle, right? Like min and ala and so on and so forth. And all huruf are mabni, as we know. Every single harf in the Arabic language is mabni. Its ending can never change. It cannot accept i'rab. So unlike the verb, the fi'al, and the ism, that can either be mabni or mu'rab, the harf is always mabni. Never, there's no such thing as a verb that's marfu' or mansub or majzumun or what the case may be. Now, that being said, from the perspective of the grammarian, the harf can be looked at as either amina or غير amina. The harf can either be amina. Amina means that it has an effect on the i'rab of the word that comes after it. Amina means a harf that has an effect on the i'rab of the word that comes after it. For example, min. Min is a harf jar, meaning what is going to make the i'rab of the word that comes after it majrurun. So it's amina. It has an effect on the word that comes after in terms of the i'rab of the word that comes after it. On the other hand, certain huruf are غير عاملة. غير عاملة is the opposite, meaning that it has absolutely no effect on the i'rab of the word that comes after it. Wow, ثم, la, ma, and others, they have no effect on the word that comes after it in terms of its i'rab. In terms of its i'rab, it doesn't make the verb that comes after it mansub or marfu or mansub. It has no effect on it. So from that perspective, when you look at a harf, any harf in the Arabic language, you have to ask yourself, is this harf غير عاملة or عاملة? Now, after you figure out that the harf is amina, for example, it has an effect on the i'rab of the word that comes after it, you have to ask yourself, is it going to have an effect on the ism that comes after it, meaning that this harf only functions with isms, or asma, I should say, or is it a harf that functions with the af'al verbs, more specifically, of course, the fi'l mudari'? So again, how huruf that are amina can be broken down these two categories. Now, if it has an effect in asma, in nouns, again, you can break it down into two different categories. Does it have an effect on two nouns that come after it? Or does it have an effect on only one noun that's going to come after it? So is it ذات عملين or ذات عمل واحد? Right? So an example of, or there's only really one type of huruf in Arabic language that only has one effect on the asma that are going to come after, which are huruf al-jar. Right, the 20 different types of huruf al-jar that Imam Malik mentions in Alfiya. All of these huruf, of course, they only have one effect on the word that's going to come right after it. Min al-bayt, ila al-bayt, ala al-bayt, or whatever the case may be. On the other hand, there are certain types of huruf that are amila and that are amila fil asma, that have action in nouns that are dhatu amalain. They're going to have an effect on two nouns that come after it. For example, the la nafiyatun min jins, right? Which is going to have an effect on two nouns that come after it, is going to make what was originally the mubtada mansub or mabda ala fath fi mahalli nasb, and is going to make the khabar, or what was originally the khabar, is going to make it marfu', right? She was saying, yani, for example, la rajula fi dar, rajula is mabna ala fath fi mahalli nasb, fi dar is shibh jumla fi mahalli raf, khabar, yani khabar la nafiyatu jins. So la nafiyatu jins is that to amalain, has two effects, and has two effects on nouns, or a shibru jumla, if you will, that is going to come after it. Okay. On the other hand, certain huruf are amila, they have an effect on the i'rab of the verb that comes after it. More specifically, the verb that is mudara'. Now, a verb that's mudara' is either going to be mansub, right? Meaning something, the harf is going to make it mansub, or the harf is going to make it majzumun, right? Because the de facto position is that the fi'l mudari is always going to be marfu'. So there's no such thing as a harf that's going to make the verb marfu'. Rather, it's either going to make it nasib, yeah, it's either going to make it mansub afwan, or it's going to make it majzuman. So حروف can either be ناصبة, which are 4 types according to School of Basra, and لن كي وإذن, or it's going to be جازمة, which are 15 different types of adawat. Of course, there's khilaf concerning this. For example, lam and in and man, right? So again, when you look at the harf, you have to ask yourself, is it عاملة or غير عاملة? If it's عاملة, is it عاملة في الأسماء? If it's عاملة في الأسماء, is it going to have 2 effects on 2 nouns or an effect on only 1 noun, right? Like the حروف الجر. Then if it's عاملة in verbs, is it going to make the verb that comes after it منصوب, like لن يذهب, or is it going to make the verb that comes after it مجزوم, like لم يذهب? Once you've understood this, you've understood حروف. خلاص. Every single thing you're going to study in huruf is going to be concerning what we just talked about. Is it عاملة or غير is it عاملة or غير عاملة? Is it عاملة في الأسماء? Is it going to have two effect on 2 nouns or 1 noun? And then in the فعل المضارع, it's going to make the noun mansub, or the verb, sorry, mansub, or is it going to be majzumun? And the list goes on. So with that, you've understood how you're supposed to look at verbs in the Arabic language from the grammarian perspective, of course. And likewise, you've understood how to look at huruf, particles from the grammarian perspectives. From the grammarian's perspective. The only question now is the ism or asma, nouns. How does the grammarian, how should we look at nouns when we're studying grammar? We should look at nouns as whether they're mu'arab or mabni. Whether they're mu'arab or mabni. Now, according to certain scholars like Sheikh Sulaiman al-Uyuni, hafidhahullah, there are 10 different types of nouns in the Arabic language that are mabni. Okay? And then in terms of mu'arab, well, we're going to see that in a second. So asma, nouns, are obviously the thing that are the most complicated, because there's a lot of different variation that can happen with nouns, unlike huruf, which are always mabni, either عاملة or غير عاملة, unlike af'al, which are very simple too. You have 3 of them that are always mabni, and then you have one that's always going to be mu'arab, either marfu', mansub, or majzum, and the default position is going to be marfu'. But asma, there's a lot more variation. So isms or asma should be looked at from the perspective of a grammarian like so. Is the noun mabni or mu'arab? If it's mabni, it has to be one of these 10 things. Either it's dama'ir, right, like huwa, hiya, or it's asma al-ishara, siwa muthanna, or it's the noun of pointing, except for the muthanna, which according to some grammarians is going to be mu'arab. So hada, hadihi, excluding hadani and hatani. Or asma al-mawsura, it's going to be a relative pronoun, right? Alladhi, alladhina, all of those are mabni. Siwa muthanna, except for the dual form like alladhani, according to some scholars. Asma al-istifham ada ay, all the nouns of asking question except for a are all going to be mabni, right? So for example, ma, man kharaja, mata kharaja, all those are mabni. Asma al-shart ada ay, all the nouns that create a conditional sentence except for a are also mabni. Asma al-af'al, all asma al-af'al, so all verbal nouns like sah, right? Like ameen. All of those nouns that have the effect or have the meaning of a verb are all mabni. Ameen is mabni. Sah is mabni. Sahi is mabni. And then this goes on. Al-alamu al-makhtum bi way. Okay? Yani like sibaway and so on and so forth. So all proper nouns that are ending with a, like sibaway and nouns like him, those nouns are all mabni also. Whether they be Arabic nouns or non-Arab nouns, doesn't matter. If it's a proper name and it's ending with a, it's going to mabni, like sibaway is mabni. Al-a'adad al-murakkaba ada 12, right? The numbers from 11 till 19 are all mabni, except for, according to certain scholars, 12. So you'll say, for example, 15, it's always mabni on fath. الظروف المركبة, ظروف that are يعني a compound, are also mabni, like صباح مساء. يعني you say, for example, أذهب إلى البيت or أذهب إلى المسجد صباح مساء. يعني I go to the masjid morning and evening, right? So صباح مساء is mabni على الفتح, مبني على الفتح. بعض الظروف المفردة, certain ظروف that are singular, that are not مركبة, are also going to be mabni, like إذا is mabni, right? أمسي is mabni على الكسر, and then this goes on. So you look at a noun, if it's mabni, it has to be one of these 10. It has to be one of these 10. If it's not, then it's mu'arab. And if it's mu'arab, it's either going to be marfu' or mansub or majrurun. And nouns that are marfu' are 6 types. nouns that are مرفوع are six types of nouns. Either the فاعل, the نائب الفاعل, the مبتدا, خبر, اسم كان, or the خبر كان, or the خبر إن عفوا. These six here are the different types of nouns in the Arabic language that are going to be مرفوع. Any other type of noun is going to be مرفوع. Nouns that are mansub, there are 12 different types. We have the مفعول به, the مفعول له, the مفعول فيه, إلى آخره. You can read this on your own, right? And then nouns that are going to be مجرور are two types of nouns, المضاف إليه and the اسم مجرور بحرف جر, right? The اسم that's مجرور because of حرف جر coming before it. And of course, to every single one of these three, so to the مجرور and the mansub and the مرفوع, we can add the توابع, right? The توابع, which are those nouns that don't have their own type of i'rab, but rather they follow the i'rab of the noun that comes before it. So the na'at, for example, and the badal and the ma'tufun alayh, and so on and so forth. So you can make it 7, 13, and 3 if you add the tawabi', the four types of tawabi'. So the tawkid, the badal, the na'at, and the ma'tufun alayh. So with that, you've understood, inshallah, we've understood how we should look at the words in the Arabic language from the perspective of the grammarian. If it's a verb, it's a mabni or mu'arab, and then you do the rest. If it's a harf, is it amila or غير amila, then you do the rest. If it's a ism, is it mabni or mu'arab, and then you can do the rest. سبحانك وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.